Reactionary.net, here to help you learn about React.js. Everyone from experts to novices, we're here to help you develop your knowledge. Let's act ready, show you how. Learn the ins and outs of React now.
Hi there web devs, Zach Brady here from the Reactionary.net. I'm so glad to see you back for our second tutorial in the code venturing tutorial series. This is a tutorial series that was inspired by a number of tutorial blog posts that I'd written on the Reactionary.net. I should be able to put a link for that right here if you want to go ahead and start reading it instead. Certainly these videos follow along behind that series, so if you were looking to get an idea of where we're going with all this, you might like to look there. This week's blog post was entitled Escaping the Minds of Tedium, and the idea is that well, I would hope that I've recruited more than just your kind self, and we're going to need to be able to create more and more of the invitation scrolls that we made in that first as part of our first React app. And so what we're going to do this week is we're going to put together a rudimentary build pipeline that we can use to become more efficient at building our React applications, and thus be able to make more and more of those invitation scrolls. Now, you may not have found this video from the first video or from the tutorial series, so you might be wondering where we are at this point within the application that we're building. So if that's you, then I'm going to put a link right there to the GitHub account or the GitHub repo for the whole CodeQuest series, and there you'll be able to find well, all the different branches, the different parts of the series, and where the code sits at the end of each of the tutorials. So actually I might make that link a specific link to the end of part 1. So if you don't want to watch part 1, or you don't want to read the first series, you're just interested in finding out about build pipelines, then that's fine. You might want to clone down the repo that we've got for part 1, and you can have a quick look at the code and get yourself quickly up to speed. Also, I'll put a link right there for the part 1 tutorial blog post. As far as the video, you should be able to look on the channel here, and you'll be able to find the first part to follow along with us. So let's not waste any more time, let's get jumping straight into this. Seen this website before? If you haven't, you're about to get very familiar with it. This is the website for Node.js. Now, Node.js is a server that is able to compile and run JavaScript. Is it in a nutshell. And it's used quite extensively throughout front-end development these days, most notably within the space of the build pipelines and so forth. And a number of the bigger build pipelines will all run within Node. So the ones like Grunt you may have heard of, Gulp. Some people like to build pipelines just using plain old just NPM tasks, which are something that we can provide through Node. And probably one of the more popular ones these days is Webpack, and that's what we're going to be using. But first we need to get Node and NPM installed. So if we have a look at their website here, you'll notice that there is a handy dandy download button here for the current version of Node.js. So go ahead and click on this, and you will get a download of an MSI here. For this, I'm on Windows obviously. For other platforms, well, nodejs.org. If you have a look around, it looks like there's a download link here. Here you go. This is where you'll be able to get all the different platforms that you can get Node on, and you can see all the different operating systems as well. I think the people at Node are probably going to be clever enough to be able to detect what platform you're on and change this button. So hopefully you can just go to the front page and be able to get the download that you need. So let's hit this. And we've got a setup wizard here. Now, I already have Node.js installed on this machine, and I don't really want to have to uninstall it and reinstall it for the purposes of a tutorial. But all you really need to do here is just click next a whole heap of times. It's a really simple installation. So here you see my command line, and what I'm going to show you here is that Node and and npm are in fact installed here. You can prove that by going ahead and typing in node-v. And if you do have Node installed, then you should see a version number like that. npm comes along with the install of Node, and if you type in npm-v there, you'll also get a version for npm. Now those version numbers may change depending on when you're watching this video, but those commands should stay relatively the same. You might have problems with that not showing up. You'll get something along the lines of that says something like npm or node-v is not recognized as an internal or external command, operable program or batch file. You might get this if you're in a Windows environment. Now, if you do get that, it's probably because Node and NPM haven't been put into your path variable. Now, I'm not going to broadcast my path variables and so forth, but if you take a quick Google and ask the question, how do I put Node and NPM into my path variable, then you'll get some pretty good responses right at the top of the list there. So that's Node and NPM installed. Let's get going with building our application, our build pipeline. So we're going to do as much of this in the command line as we can, just so that I don't have to switch between windows too much. So we're in the path that I was in when I was making the application in the last tutorial. Let's have a quick look here. So we've got the code quest part 1 folder there that's got all the application that we built last time. So let's go ahead and make ourselves a new directory here. Code quest part 2. We'll do some copy pasting a little bit later. Then we'll go into that new folder that we've made. And what we need to do now is we're going to use npm and we're going to start a new npm package repository sort of thing. So to do that, we use the command npm init. If you run that, you'll see that it flicks away there, and rather than reading that out verbatim, I'll allow you to do that in your own command line. But here it's asking for the package name, the name of the thing that we're going to, our repository. So I'm just going to leave that. Oh, I can't actually leave that at code quest part 1 because it doesn't like having any capital letters. So let's call it code quest part 2, all lowercase. What version is it? Well, I mean, technically it's 0.0.1. A short description. So an epic application to achieve grok of React.js. The entry point, well, I mean, we're not going to have an entry point for right now, so we'll just go ahead and accept the default. I should say the things that are in brackets as we go through these are the defaults, and you can technically just hit enter all the way through these. I'm just more being whimsical about putting in the values. So all the rest of these things are all properties that will be taken up if you were to upload this to npm.js.com, I think it is. But that's the repository where all the npm packages are. And you can think of, if you're a .NET developer, you can think of npm as NuGet. It's basically NuGet for JavaScript development. So the author is going to be Zach Brady. The license, we'll make it an MIT license. And then it shows you the repository file that it's going to build here. The repository file is it's called package.json. It lives at the root of your application, and it's a JSON file. So it has information about the package that you're building. So is this okay? Yes, it's okay. And if we have a quick look at so we've now got a package.json in the root of our application. So now we're all ready to rock and roll with building this build pipeline. We've got npm installed, we've got our npm package, our package.json initialized. Now you may have been thinking, why are we initializing this package JSON? We're not building an npm package, and you're right. But you'll see in a moment why we've started doing that. So just as a bit of housekeeping, I'm going to go ahead and copy all the files from the previous tutorial. Never mind this idea thing, that's just JetBrains' configuration files. So we won't copy that, we'll copy all the rest of it though. We'll put that in with our application. latest project. So let's have a quick look at this package.json. So here's all the things that we filled out whilst we were initializing the package. Now, what is the use of this file? So I'm just going to open up the terminal within JetBrains here. This is a great bit of kit, JetBrains. The WebStorm here. I really enjoy using this piece of kit. So I'm going to start using the terminal within WebStorm now. Partly because it's a nicer experience, and partly so that once again I don't have to flip between screens here. So what we're going to do is with npm we're going to pull in React and React DOM. So in order to be able to do that, we use the command npm I, that's install, React space React DOM dash big S. So that says npm install me React and React DOM, and those are the npm package versions. So React has been kind enough to be able to put up packages that you can pull down from npm, and then this dash big S. Now that stands for save, and you'll see what that does in a moment. So let's go ahead and we'll hit enter there. Probably should have hit enter earlier and let this install whilst I was talking there, because then I wouldn't have this this wait time. Okay, so now you can see we've got everything installed here. It's installed React as well as a number of other dependencies that React and React DOM have. The other thing that it should have done, if I click on here, it may update. There we go. Okay, so now it's added a key called Dependencies, and it's got React and React DOM. So we weren't actually building an npm package so that we could upload it to npm. What this is actually doing is it's tracking our dependencies, and later on down the line it's also going to be responsible for giving us command line, commands that we can use in order to be able to do different things within our build pipeline, and that will be implemented via npm tasks. The packages get installed within Node modules here. And if we open this up, you'll see that it's pulled a whole heap of things down from the internet. The cool thing about this package JSON is the fact that it describes the dependencies and the behaviors of your of the build pipeline, which means that you can store this straight into source control, and you don't have to worry about storing all these dependencies. So what we could do is we could have a git ignore that ignores these node modules, so it doesn't get sent back up. So let's say that we've just pulled this down. Let's delete this node modules here. So if we've just pulled down this as a repo, then the first thing that we could do is do npm I, and it will go through package.json and it'll pull down all those dependencies for us. So now we've got React and React DOM pulled down and stored as dependencies, but they're not the only dependencies that we're going to need in order to be able to build our build pipeline. Now I've put into my clipboard here the code snippet from the blog post, which just has all the different dependencies of the command in order to be able to install them. You see there's quite a number of them there, so I might kick this off, and then you can pause the video if you'd like just to copy that command down. As it's installing, let's talk about each of these packages and what they are. So we've got babel-core here. And by the way, I'll put links either on the screen or in the description as I'm going along here. So babel-core is the core package of Babel. So Babel is a piece of kit that allows you to be able to translate certain types of JavaScript into other types of JavaScript. So it might be ES6 to ES5, or in our case, it can also be JSX to plain old ES5. So that's going to be more relevant going forward, probably. Babel-preset-react is the plugin for Babel in order to be able to do that JSON to ES5 conversion that I was just talking about. Webpack is the build pipeline that we're going to be using. It's a pretty decent bundler that allows you to be able to pull in a whole heap of JavaScript and CSS and any number of other resources, bundle them all up, and have it spit out a package that you can run a web application with. babel-loader is a package that is, well, it's a loader and loaders are used by Webpack in order to be able to load resources into Webpack. So it's little pieces of code that Webpack says, go get me these resources, and the loader knows how to get those resources. And that one in particular is one that allows us to be able to load our JavaScript into Babel. So the Babel translates it and then hands it to Webpack. So the CSS loader is to be able to actually load CSS files into Webpack, and style loader is the part that has the smarts in order to be able to take all that CSS and inject a style tag into the output, such that everything within that bundle is able to use the styles that you've loaded in there. Now, because we're going to be using a scroll image, we're going to be using image-webpack-loader, and that's so that we can get that scroll image into Webpack and out into our output bundle as well. And that penultimate package there is the file loader, and that's going to be used in order to be able to load in our HTML file. So that just needs to be a simple file loader. You might also notice that I haven't used the big S there. I've used a big D instead. So what's the difference there? Well, what we're saving down into is the dev dependencies. And the difference is that the dependencies are more the packages that are needed in order for your actual application to run. So in this case, React and React DOM are two dependencies that our application needs in order for it to be able to run in production. And the dev dependencies are for the things that you need during development, the things that are actually used to build the application, and that's where all Webpack and all those dependencies that we've just pulled in live. Now that looks like a lot of dependencies, and well, you're right. You do have to be careful that your applications don't unduly bloat with all these really easy to get packages. But we've just walked through each of these and why they're useful in our particular instance, so you can understand that whilst that is a lot of packages, we haven't gone overboard here. This isn't yet death by NPM packages. Okay, so we've pulled down all our dependencies and we're ready to start building our build pipeline. Seems like I've said that a few times now, but this time I promise we will actually start building our build pipeline. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to need to set up the configuration for Webpack. Webpack looks for its configuration in the root of the project that you're building. So in the root we're going to create a file called webpack.config.js. Within webpack.config.js, we're going to take some code that I'm going to copy paste from the blog post here, and then we're going to do a little bit of talking about this code here. So you see here that we're setting up a config object that we're putting on the exports of this particular module. Now Webpack reads this in using the CommonJS standard, which I'll let you Google for and have a look. But essentially, this module.exports is going to be the only publicly available entry point into this module. So the config object that gets returned when Webpack pulls in this module has got a key here called context. Now context is the absolute path to where our application lives on this machine, and so this path is being resolved to dir name, which is underscore dir name, which is a node variable, an environment variable that houses within it is the path to where node is actually currently being executed, and then we're adding on the src folder at the end of it, which makes me realize that we actually have some work to do with our directory structure here because we don't currently have an src or a source folder. There's a gotcha here. We're using path.resolve in order to be able to resolve our path. Now path is a common Node package it comes sort of already built in. We're requiring it in here at the top of our file. And the reason that we're doing that is because Webpack only considers paths to be valid if they're using /. Now, I'm on a Windows box here, and Windows uses backslashes. Now, as to the reason why Webpack is like that, I'm yet to discover, but there is an entry in their gotchas section, which I suppose I can put a link for there, and you can have a read of that yourself. The next key in the config object is the entry key, and you can see there that we've said that index.js within the root of our project is going to be the, well, actually not within the root of our project, because remember, context is where we're going to be starting, and that's going to be in the source folder, which is going to be in the root of our project. So it'll be in source index.js is where we're going to start. Now the entry point is called thusly because that's where Webpack starts to require in all the stuff that is going to bundle up. So it looks in index.js because that's what we've given it, and it looks at that file and it looks for all the different requires, and then it pulls in all the requires, and then it looks in those requires and pulls in more and grabs everything that it needs. But that's where it starts is index.js. The next key is the output key, and that itself is an object, and that at the moment only describes where we're going to be outputting our bundle. So we're going to output it to a file called app.js, and that's going to live in the dist folder that's going to be in the root of our application. So this is actually the part where in the blog post that we are supposed to copy those files across. So allow me to use this part of the YouTube video in order to be able to correct my earlier mistake. So we're going to make ourselves a new directory called source, or src, and to be more accurate, and we're going to copy all the, so now we've got node modules, so make sure you don't copy that in there. We're going to copy all the resources from the previous tutorial into the source folder here. There we go, that's better. So now outside of the source folder, all we've got is node modules, package.json, and the Webpack config.js. So the next thing we're going to do is create our entry point. So we'll make another file called index.js. It's going to live in the source folder, just on the root there. And I'll do some more copy pasting from the blog post here. Right, so let's have a look at this. So we've got a require that looks in, this is a relative path to script code quest. Now we haven't added the .js on the end there because CommonJS doesn't require us to do so. So we've just left that off. The next thing we do is we require in relatively the CSS codequest.css file. Now Webpack's going to know how to load this in because of our CSS loader and our style loader. So even though it's loading in, so it loads into JavaScript, it loads into CSS as well, and you can see that it also is loading in the plain file, that being the index.html. And so that's all the loaders that we were talking about in action. Although to say that this is how that loader magic works is perhaps jumping the gun a little bit. That is how those loaders will end up being enacted once the bundle actually starts working. But we do have to do some configuration, and we'll do that in a moment. But we're on a roll with all these requires, so let's now take a step into the codequest.js file here and take a look at this this React global variable. And we can free ourselves from that global variable by turning this file into a module that can be required in via Webpack, And in doing that, we can attain some encapsulation within our JavaScript. I won't go into how we're attaining that via, but it's via CommonJS. But I'm not going to go into the details of why that happens, because I think it's a little bit outside of the scope of the conversation here. But at the top here, we're going to create a new local variable, and it is going to be the result of a call to require React. And that means then that this React variable here, and indeed all the rest of these here, are actually now looking at the local variable rather than the global one. And the local variable is being populated by require to React. Now equally, we can do the same thing with React DOM by requiring in React DOM there. And now this this folder is no longer using, this JavaScript file is no longer using the global variables of React and React DOM. And so, having freed ourselves from those the dependencies on the global variables, we can now head into our index.html here and get rid of our CDN links to React and React DOM, leaving us just with the last script tag to our application. But this is then this index.html is going to become our built application. And so you remember that in the webpack.config here, we were going to call our bundled JavaScript file app.js. So let's change this here to app.js, so that when the application gets built, it's then pointing to the correct path to the correctly named JavaScript file in order for the application to run. Now, you remember how I was saying that we had to configure all those loaders that we brought in as dependencies earlier? Well, now's the time that we're going to do it. So let's head on over to our webpack.config.js. We're going to add a little bit here. We're going to add a module key, and within the module is going to be a loaders key. And loaders is an array which takes configuration for each of the loaders that you are going to be using when you're building your Webpack bundle. The first loader here, the first configuration, has the key, each of these will have a key called test. And that takes some regex that is run over the name of each of the files that is found within the context. So in our case, that is the dir name source. So it's going to look at each of the files and it'll run the regex over it. So the test for this particular loader is for any files that end with .js. The exclude says any files that end with .js, except if you find them in the node modules folder, because we don't want that. So you remember that Webpack requires, and then it requires, and it requires again. So with the require that goes into React in our codequest.js, now we don't want to load React, any files that involved in this require here into our babel-loader. We assume that is already already translated code. We don't need to do any further transpiling on that. So let's ignore it. So that's a sort of a performance tweak there. Loader is the name of the loader that you want to use. So in case you haven't already guessed it, this is the configuration for the babel-loader. So the loader that takes care of all the JavaScript that we're loading in for this particular applicable for this particular bundle. Query here takes a property called presets, which is where we tell Babel, hey, you're going to be pulling in React components as part of your JavaScript. So be aware of that and do what you need to do in order to be able to translate the calls that you find. And that's going to be more relevant during during JSX. Now I have to admit I don't know exactly what it's doing, but I did try and run it when I was doing the blog post without this presets-react, and I did have some problems. So it's included now. Why it had problems why it had problems when I was building the blog post is really inconsequential, because we're going to be using JSX before you know it, and then you will need this, so it's not all that important. So the next loader is the CSS loader, and you can see we're actually loading the style loader and the CSS loader at the same time with this particular key. So all files that end in CSS are going to go through the style and the CSS loader. The next one is for our scroll image here, and it looks for GIF files, and it wants to put them through the so now this is actually going through two loaders. So this is a different way to make it go through two loaders. So with here, it's going through two loaders as well, and we're just using this sort of bang as a pipe. Whereas in this form, where we define an array, now there's a little bit of a gotcha here. Don't forget to change loader to loaders if you're going to do this. That has tripped me up before, and it raises an insanely cryptic error message that will you'll need to go to have a coffee to calm down after you find that problem. So within here, we send the GIF file through the file loader first, and it hashes up the image, and then that also then goes through image-webpack. And finally, we've got to configure the file loader for the HTML file that we want to include as well. So yeah, just if the file ends in .html, then throw that through the file loader. And now we're so close. We've just got a few more things to do, right? So what we're going to do now is we have to create some commands that we're going to be able to use to call this build pipeline into action. So we're going to head back into our package.json, and I am going to grab from the blog post a little bit of code here. We're going to find the scripts key in the package.json that we're in, and we're going to put in a couple of extra keys here. Start and build. Now start, okay, so maybe just a quick overview of what this is. So this scripts key defines a number of different NPM tasks that you can, well, kick off through NPM. And when you call each of these tasks and you tell them to run, then they run what's in the value of these keys in a node environment. So the start calls the Webpack dev server command within the node environment, and build calls just Webpack. Now this test we'll leave that there for now, but that was generated for us as part of the npm init. Now Webpack dev server and well, you won't be asking yourself what Webpack is, but you might be asking yourself what Webpack dev server is. And to answer that question, well, I forgot to do one of the dependencies when we were pulling in all the rest of the dependencies. So let's just go down to the terminal here. There's one thing further we're going to do. We're going to go npm install, and Webpack dev server, and we're going to add -g there. Now little g or lowercase g, whichever you prefer, that says I want to install this globally. So npm installs itself, and it holds its own node modules. And because you have in your path variable a link to npm, by doing a -g, what you do is you install the whatever package you're wanting to install effectively into the path variable. So if we were to hit enter and start installing this, what you'll find in a moment is that I should be able to run as a command in the command line Webpack dev server. And so that's what this script here is doing. So when we call this task here, it'll enact that command. So let's have a quick look. Webpack dev server. Okay. All right, so I don't have access to a port. So I mean, what I've done there is I haven't given Webpack dev server enough information in order to be able to run. But it would run if I had called the command correctly. The point is that it didn't get that inoperable. I don't know what Webpack dev server is. So you can see that has been installed in a sudo sort of path sort of way, which is pretty cool. So one last thing to do. We've got Webpack dev server installed. Now you saw earlier that I tried to call Webpack dev server within my command line, and I got this error here, and that was because I didn't provide it with enough configuration in order to be able to set up a sensible server. So there's one further thing that we need to do, and that is provide some configuration for Webpack dev server. So once again, I've copied this from the blog post, and so here you can see content base is a key that describes where the web server is going to be hosted from, and so we've said that we're going to host it from our dist folder here. The port is, well, pretty self-explanatory, the port that it's going to open, and open it just says that it's going to open up an instance of your bundle running within your default browser whenever Webpack dev server runs. So I haven't actually said what Webpack dev server is. So Webpack dev server is a little piece of kit that Webpack themselves have put out, and it allows you to be able to provide a nice tight feedback loop for your development. So it will set up a little simple HTTP server that serves up your application as per the configuration that you've set up, and then it listens. Well, you can also set it up so that it listens to the files that you that you change, and then it's able to refresh your page, and it's got a whole heap of really cool little things that we're going to dig into in future tutorials. But for right now, just believe me that it's cool, and I really quite like it a lot. So it's the moment of truth, and in the previous tutorial I was brave enough to do this as a live code sort of thing, so I haven't actually tried to make this build yet, and I hope that I can keep up my 100% winning streak here. But let's kick off these tasks that we've built with our pipeline. So in order to be able to do that, we have to use the command npm run build, and this will run our build command as per the package JSON here. So it's going to run the command webpack. So that looks like so far so good, and we've got a little bit of output here. You can see that it's emitted a few files, and it looks like I've been successful in being able to continue with my streak here. You can see that a dist folder has appeared, and in this we have outputted a GIF with char value for the file name, and that's been done via the Webpack config here. You see we've charred up the file name, and then it's gone through image-webpack to be loaded in. You can see that the index.html has come through the file loader, and the CodeQuest.js as well as the index.js has been bundled into our .js. Now, where is the CSS? It's actually bundled within app.js. Now, you'll need to Google for the full details of this, because we're already running long on this video, but that's where it is, right? So it's within this file, which you can see here has all been bundled up for us via Webpack. So let's try running the Webpack dev server. And to do that, we use another command which we have built, which is start. Now, npm start doesn't need the run in between. Start is like a special task. So you can just write npm start. And it's actually loaded on my other screen here, but you can see it has opened up within Webpack dev server here. Now it looks like this one might not have been as successful. The most painful part of that mix-up is the fact that it all stems from a mistake that I made very early on in the tutorial. So unless I want to go back and re-record the whole thing, then I guess I'm just going to have to admit defeat here. So let me walk you through what's going wrong here. So you can see that we're getting 404s on the CSS and the app.js, and that's because we didn't make all the changes that we needed in the index.html. So we got rid of the CDNs and then we changed the app.js, but you can see that we've left the script folder as part of the path here. And you can see that the app.js doesn't live in a script folder, so it can't find that. Equally, you remember I said that our CSS is now bundled up within that app.js file, so this link tag here is no longer relevant either. However, it does give me an opportunity in order to be able to show you some cool things with the Webpack dev server. You remember how I said that there was a nice tight feedback loop with Webpack dev server. So, and I can show you that right now. So as it stands, we have window here, and what I might do is I will just put that on that side and that on that side, and then if I am to get rid of this and then get rid of this, and I'll hit Control S to save, you'll see two things. First of all, you'll see Webpack dev server rebundle up the files that have changed, and second of all, you should see the web page refresh itself, so that all those changes get taken up. So let's have a look, and there we go. And you see that it's a really nice way of working, and I mean that's it. We've done our build pipeline. Our application works as it did before. Hello, Zach. I'd like to invite you on a wondrous adventure towards the grok of React.js. Will you join me? And that's it. Now, there's one thing that took me a really long time to learn, and I'd like to point it out to you now, so that hopefully you can be one step ahead of me. See how when Webpack dev server opens it up in the localhost 3000, and then it puts this Webpack dev server thing on the end of it. What that actually is it loads your application up within an iframe, and this is outside of the iframe here. This is like a little status bar thing, and in some instances that can mess around with your application, and it also makes it a little bit more of a pain to be able to debug within here and so forth. So what you can do is, if you get rid of that, hit enter, it's still hosting on the root of the port that that Webpack dev server is running on. So if you want to just get to just your plain application without that iframe and all the rest of the stuff that Webpack dev server puts on around it, you can do that, and that's will probably save you a little bit of hassle in some instances. And so there you have it, web devs and code venturers. You've now escaped the minds of Tedium and are able to build React apps with a very powerful piece of kit called Webpack. And whilst that is a fairly simple implementation of a Webpack build pipeline, I hope that you've been able to gain a deep understanding of how we put that together, and that should aid you in being able to learn how to create far more advanced build pipelines. So let's cover off just quickly what we learned. So We learned about installing Node and Npm, and then we learned how to initialize an Npm package. We pulled down all the dependencies and we learned the difference between the just regular dependencies and dev dependencies. Then what we did is we started configuring Webpack, and we changed all our JavaScript files and our different files within the application in order to be able to require themselves into a Webpack bundle. We configured Webpack in order to be able to use all the different loaders that will be able to get all those resources in. We installed Webpack dev server and configured that. And then finally we were able to create our NPM tasks that gave us a button to push in order to be able to make all this magic happen. So until next time, have fun playing with React.js.
Let Zach Brady show you how to learn the ins and outs of React now.